up on God. Don't give up on God. In spite of what the doctor says, you just gotta trust and lean on Him. Don't give up on God, because He will never give up on you. Do I have a believer to know that He's able?
Amen. Amen. Slowly but surely, we are coming back to some form of normalcy all around the world. I know you'll get tired of hearing me mention it, but that the pandemic has just really just messed up a lot of stuff. It has, yes, coming into our worship services, cutting into the fellowship, but there's nothing that God cannot do. He's able to bring us, He brought us through already, and He's able to carry us even further. It is my intention, I've been going around the city, been eating in restaurants and been seeing persons going in stores, and a lot of people have decided that they feel comfortable not wearing the mask, and then there's some who are still wearing them, which I'm not against anybody doing anything that they feel is going to take care of them and protect them. But I do believe that the shot, the vaccine, is doing what it's supposed to do. And I think this coming month, September, October 1, there's going to be another booster out, and I'm going to get it. And I've had 4 shots already, and if I have to have 4 more, I'm going to take 4 more. Because I do believe that the Lord has answered our prayer when it comes to these vaccines, because they are working. I know there's still some folk that's saying, well, I don't want to take that shot because I don't know what's in it. And some of them same folk will tell me that and drive over to McDonald's. Amen. You'll get it on the way home. But so we need to drop that foolishness and decide that we're going to do what it takes, not only to take care of ourselves, but to take care of others. So I said that because I'm going to be watching these numbers and see how they are, and I'm going to be talking to medical professionals to see how they are. And at some point, we will have masks are going to be optional here at the church. I didn't say next Sunday. I didn't say tomorrow. I said at some point. I'll let you know when, if you feel comfortable wearing your mask here in the worship service, you can, or if you feel comfortable not wearing it, you can. But we're going to try to see how those numbers go before we do anything. But right now, if something ain't broke, let's don't try to fix it. So we're doing okay, and we're going to continue to do that and try to do what we can to keep ourselves as well as others safe. This morning, there is a word. There is a word, and it comes from one of my favorite passages of Scripture that I have touched on more than once, and we're going to touch on it again because somebody needs to hear this. Go to the 2 Corinthians. I guess that'll be coming up soon on there we are, 2 Corinthians. And I took it out of the King James Version this morning rather than God's Word, and I'll let you know why. Because there is one word in the King James Version that I like better than I like in the God's Word, because the God's Word version seemed to have watered that word down. It didn't mean to water the Scripture down. I said to water that word down because I think more emphasis ought to be put on it, and I like the way the King James Version does it. So lest we take up any more time, let's start at verse 6. This is the Apostle Paul writing, by the way. We'll get to that. For though I would desire to glory, I shall not be a fool, for I say the truth. For now I forbear, lest any man should think of me above that which he seeth me to be, or that he heareth of me. I know those sound like those words are, oh, Reverend, you got to deal with that. We will. God's word deal with it real well. But here again, we're going to do it in King James. And lest I should be exalted above measure through the abundance of the revelations, there was given to me a thorn in the flesh, the a messenger of Satan to buffet me, lest I should be exalted above measure. For this thing I besought the Lord thrice, that it might depart from me. And he said unto me, my grace is sufficient for thee, for my strength is made perfect in weakness. Most gladly, therefore, will I rather glory in my infirmities, that the power of Christ may rest upon me. Therefore, I take pleasure in infirmities, in reproaches, in necessities, in persecutions, in distress for Christ's sake. For when I am weak, then am I strong. I just want to talk about that's enough for me. Man, that's enough for me. I promised you all, Belinda, that I would tell you why I would rather take it from King James than from God's Word. The word grace is what I looked at this morning and said I would rather do the King James grace, because Lionel, the word grace is translated in God's Word as kindness. But in the King James, we have the word grace. Now, I'm not saying that the translators, that I'm any more smarter than the translators who took that translation and made God's Word. No, I'm not saying that. Because if you look at that word, if you go back to the original Greek text and you look at that word, the Greek text will give you a word for grace. And of course, when it's translated, and when it's translated into English, and when it's defined in English, it will say kindness. Because I don't have a problem with that. Grace is kindness. But when it's used in this particular text, I would rather for them to use grace, because God is more than kind. Jesus Christ is more than kind. He's kinder than kind. It's kind of like when you wash your hands. You know, water will wash your hands, but when you put soap in it, soap is wetter than water. And therefore you get a cleaner clean. Did I say that right? You get a cleaner clean when you apply the soap and the water. So what I'm saying is, when we talk about grace, yes, it's kindness, but when we say God's grace is more gracious than grace. Okay? And so I wanted to put the strength on that, because all of us are sinners who are saved not by just kindness, but we're saved by grace. You know, kindness is one thing, being nice is one thing, but grace is another thing. When we talk about God's grace, we're talking about going beyond being kind. So what we have here, the Apostle Paul, I'm not going to take your time. The Apostle Paul here is writing in this 2 Corinthians. And in some ways, this 2 Corinthian text is in response to some of the criticism that Paul had gotten from the 1 Corinthian text. You know, it's hard when you tell folk that they got to shape up. And in the 1 Corinthians, Paul was writing to the Corinth church that y'all gonna have to shape up. That there were some things that were going on in that church that should not have been going on. And what had happened was, when Paul exercised his criticism toward the things that were going on there, then he gets a response that some of the people accepted it, but most of them did not. And rather than to put deep questions about why he had said some of the things, some of the folks started attacking his character. Now, I hate that when people do character assassination simply because they told you the truth. Because to me, that's very childish, that when somebody tells you something that's true, then you want to find something that's wrong with them. the Apostle Paul was not telling them anything that was assaulting their character. He just told them that when they come together, the worship ought to be decent and in order. He told them that there were certain things that were happening within their worship service that were pagan driven, and that you didn't need to have that kind of thing in the church because the church ought to be different from what you came out of. And a lot of them didn't want to hear that. A lot of them didn't want to hear about some of the things that they were doing, and so they assaulted his character by saying what? By saying that he was not an apostle. And Paul basically was letting them know that, no, I'm not Peter, I'm not James, I'm not John, but as far as the apostle side is concerned, I am an apostle. And in this particular scripture, he's really vindicating his apostleship and also talking about some things that we all Christians ought to agree with, that the grace of God is sufficient. Now, when I say that word apostle, I know some of you got real quiet because you think that there's still some apostles around. No, they're not. No, that office of the apostle was a special created office that Jesus did for those who had been a part of his ministry. So one of the first things you had to do was you had to be knowing and be with Christ during his lifetime. Now, I know we've got people around now saying that they're apostles, and that's all right. Basically, you're using it as a title. But to clarify something, that is one of those things that God did one time. You know, I've told y'all before that he doesn't have to do anything over again. He made this world one time. Can I get a witness? He destroyed it by water one time. He sent Jesus Christ through Mary one time. Jesus died on the cross one time. Jesus got up from the grave one time. I wish I had a witness. So there are some things that he does not have to do over again, because if he had to do it over again, that means he made a mistake the first time. God made the world in 1 week, and you didn't hear him say, uh-oh, I got to do it over. No, he did it all one time. And why does that have anything to do with me, Reverend? Well, what it has to do with you is this. A lot of us walking around here thinking we got to be saved again. He saved you one time. And once saved, always saved. So just one time. So what we see here, the Apostle Paul is vindicating this. So, well, Reverend, he didn't walk with Jesus during Christ's lifetime. In fact, after the resurrection and all of that, Paul was involved in going around putting folks in jail, killing Christians, trying to stomp out Christianity. And now he's going to claim that he's an apostle? Yes, and I'll tell you why. Because one day on the Damascus Road, Saul was involved in his business. He was going down there to lock up a preacher named Ananias, and then to put to death, if not death, but incarcerate all of those who were calling on the name of Jesus. But on that Damascus Road, a power more powerful than his hatred knocked him off of his beast and sent him in another direction, blinded him from his foolishness, and then opened his eyes to the truth. And then he spent some time in the desert, just him and the Lord. And then when he comes back, he will tell you that he would count all of that other stuff as nothing for knowing who Jesus Christ is. In fact, now he says, though I speak 7 languages, though I'm able to understand the law, because I sat at the feet of Gamaliel, I will count all of that as trash. And I claim not to know anything among you except Jesus Christ and him crucified. What I'm trying to tell y'all is this, Paula, you may not have a PhD degree. You may not have rocket science in your resume, but do you know who Jesus is? Because if you know who Jesus is, all of that is great on your resume, may get you a good job. But do you know who Jesus is? Paul declares now, yes, I'm an apostle because I've been with the Lord. And then we look, we see that he must have had some knowledge of Christ, because 3/4 of what you have in this New Testament came from a man who used to want to kill everybody that spoke about Jesus. So now he's vindicating himself. He says, they're saying, well, you're not an apostle. And Paul says, I don't want to sound like I'm bragging. And so when you try to interpret what he's saying from verse 1 through verse 6, he said, I don't want to sound like I'm bragging, but I knew of a man who was taken into an out-of-body experience. He's talking about himself. He's divorcing himself for what happened to him. He's letting them know that I had an out-of-body experience. He said, I was lifted up, and I saw some things that I really can't speak of, some unspeakable things. I was lifted up into the third heaven. Now, I told y'all before, we said, where's this third heaven? Well, let's look at what ancient thought was. Ancient thought was that there were 3 levels when it comes to heaven. That this atmosphere that we live in, that is the first level. Here with the clouds, and when it rains and snows or whatever storms may come, that's on the first level. The second level is where we see the moon, stars, sun, because that's above our atmosphere. Then they said at the third level, that's where God lives. In other words, they saying that there was 3 levels. And you know what? You say, well, that sounds kind of ignorant. And yeah, it really is, because we're talking about spirituality. But if you want to look at it where folk can explain it, let me help you with that, because I'm almost agreeing with this third heaven stuff. He said, what do you mean by that? I believe that God is above the clouds and the rain and the storm. I believe all of that is earthbound stuff. And I do believe that once you leave the earth and leave its atmosphere, you can't breathe up there where the stars are. You can't function up there where the moon is, because there is no air. There's no atmosphere there. So that's another level. And then above that, which we cannot see, if we say that God made everything, then God is not of this world. Somebody missed that. If we say that God is above everything, we know that God is not of the earth. Preach, Reverend. And we also know that God is not of the moon, because men been there and didn't find nothing up there. So we know that God must be above everything that we can see. So I'll go along with you until you give me another level. I'll ride on the elevator to the second level. But when you get to that third level, I don't know. I hadn't been there. I don't know. I can't see what's up there. So I'm almost there when it comes to that third level. Now, there were some pagans who believed in 7 levels. 7 levels of heaven. And they would go around making poetry about it and talking about, oh, when I fell in love, she put me in 7th heaven. Y'all heard that, haven't you? It ain't nothing but poetry. I don't know how many levels it is, but I don't think the level will go up to 7. Amen. And be careful when you call your wife or your girlfriend an angel. All the angels are men. Help me, somebody. He said he got caught up. He got caught up. And he saw some things that he really could brag about. And look at the contrast here. God has been so good to him as to show him, give him a vision, take him up. And then Calvin, after taking him up, in those first 5 verses, and he says, I could boast about that, I could brag about that, I could tell you things about that. But then he makes look at the contrast here. I can tell you about all those good things, but when I get to know the 6th verse, I got to tell you about something else. The same God, watch this, that carried me up to 3 levels of heaven. I asked him 3 times to do something about a problem I have. Come on. I'm just about through. He says, there was a thorn in my flesh, a messenger of Satan. Look at this. He said, whatever is happening to me, I know it didn't come from God. Ooh, let me help you with this. Now, somebody ain't going to like this, but I'm going to tell it. You know, every time you have in trouble, don't mean that God is whipping you. I heard so many people say that before. I'm just going to go and take my time. I got a little time. People get thinking that because something bad happened, oh, the Lord is whipping me. You couldn't stand one of them from your mama. How you going to stand one from God? And there's some Negroes out here that will whoop you and you wish it was God. Hey, man, somebody talk to me here. You need to quit assigning all trouble that God is some kind of way trying to get you. I'm going to straighten it out. I'm going to straighten it out. All trouble that you have ain't because of something that you have done. Let me put it like this. If we would sit up, let's be honest with each other. Do you think you could really stand a whipping from God if he would whip you for all the stuff we've done? Somebody say, yeah, you could. Well, baby, take me to heaven with you, because most of us down here done some stuff. And you could, so what Paul does in this particular scripture is he assigns the trouble to where it came from. He said he didn't, and notice, he didn't say I didn't deserve it. He didn't say that. He said that the messenger of Satan was put a thorn in his flesh. He assigns the trouble that he's having as being coming from the devil. Now, the question is, why didn't God stop it? Why doesn't God just step in and just stop all the trouble I'm having? You know, you ask yourself the question, Lord, why don't the Lord come? And see, that's why you have to have a personal relationship with Christ to understand that he ain't gonna stop everything, because all things are not designed to punish you. Fact of the matter is, our own conscience punishes us enough. Oh boy, wait a minute, let me see. I know y'all listening. I ain't looking for no shouting. I just want you to understand what I'm trying to say. Listen, he says the messenger of Satan to buffet me, and then he answers why God didn't stop it. He says, lest I should be exalted above measure. But now what he's saying is, God didn't stop it because it takes some things to keep me from getting too cocky. You know, some of us can act a sure enough fool when we get a little bit more than what we had. Watch out. Watch out. Watch out. God, how come the Lord didn't make me rich like he made Steve Jobs? Well, the reason he didn't is because you don't know how to handle it. How come he didn't give me what he gave Fred Day? Because maybe Fred can handle it and you can't. Because some of us, if we got $5, we around here acting like, you know, we know everybody. Give us 5 more, we a $10 fool. Amen, Reverend. Don't know how to handle it. You get a little bit more than what you have, or be a little bit more. Get promoted on your job. Some of us get a promotion, and boy, you put a tie around our neck. You be wishing it was a noose. Some of them. You say, Lord have mercy. He is acting a show enough fool. But you see, the Lord sometimes will allow trouble to keep you humble, to make you understand you ain't no more than nobody else. Somebody better help me here. And also, Marcellus, what he will do, he will allow some of that trouble to come to you so that you will remember where he brought you from. Somebody help me here. He allows some trouble to happen to folk to show you where I can bring you out of. Yes, he can. I'm not going to stand up here and act. You know, come November, I will have been with you all 37 years. And somebody reminded me, said, yeah, Reverend, man, we used to come down to Bethlehem and you be standing all up on the pews and on the table and on the stuff. I said, them days over, bro. Well, I said, no, see, the Lord, when I was into my sermon, sometime I would do that, but the Lord sure got more sense than I got, because I ain't getting up there no more. Calvin, it ain't the getting up, it's the coming. Somebody know what I'm talking about. I wake up in the morning, I used to get up, Mike, hear the clock go off, boom, I'm out. Now when the clock go off, I'm going, I'm trying to figure out how I'm going to do this. And every now and then, y'all know when my back went out, that gave, the Lord was telling me, you need to sit down somewhere. Hey, are y'all in here with me? He was letting me know, and I didn't want my back to be out. I didn't want to miss those Sundays that I was not here. I didn't want to have to use that chair when I was up here. But what he was doing was reminding me, listen, I brought you a long way. You didn't get here by yourself. And what I'm telling you right now is, if you want to get a little further, you better slow it down. Preach, Reverend. And I ain't the only one. Somebody else in here done kind of you done pumped the brakes, hadn't you? You ain't got no choice but to pump the brakes. And every now and then I get a little tinge. That's the messenger of Satan telling me, slow it down, back up. And the Lord didn't stop. He could have stopped it, but he didn't. He just said, hold on. Other day I came in here with that thing around my wrist because I had popped it some kind of way. I didn't want to do it, but it happened. I didn't want to, a few years ago, have the doctor tell me, you know you diabetic? And I go, no, doctor, I didn't know. He said, well, yes, you are, and there's some things that you can't do. And Lord knows I love peach cobbler. But it don't love them numbers on that monitor. Preach, Reverend. Some things I cannot do like I want to do. Now, do you ever have some peach cobbler? Oh, yeah. But not as much. And not as often. Because there's a messenger telling me you can't do this any longer. So lest I be exalted above measure, lest I think I'm more than what I am, there are some things that the Lord is allowing in my life that he's not changing right now. But I got good news for you. His grace is sufficient. Paul said, for this thing I besought the Lord thrice, that it might depart from me. Okay, let me see if I can come down somebody's street. Somebody listening to me today, and I know it is. It may be on Facebook, it may be on the conference call, and it might be in here. You got something that's been bothering you for a while. Hadn't stopped you from going to work. Hadn't stopped you from sleeping. Hadn't stopped you from eating. Hadn't stopped you from getting around. But it bugs you. It's just gnawing at you. Every now and then you dream about it. You get up and think about it. Or you'll see something, and the word now is trigger. Something that will trigger your thoughts about it. And you're saying to yourself, and you would almost doubt the power of God because God has not moved that particular thing. Let me go back to Calvary, and maybe I can bring you up. You know, when Jesus knew, knowing that he had to give his life for the sins of the world, he did something that we ought to do when something triggers with us. That is, pray. He went to Gethsemane. And in the Garden of Gethsemane, we find Jesus praying. And then he says, Lord, if it be your will, remove this cup. Somebody help me here. Wait a minute, am I right? He said, Lord, remove this cup. And then, let's go a little further. Y'all still with me? When he gets to Calvary, Calvin, he's hanging on the cross, and he says, Father, Father, why hast thou forsaken me? Didn't he say that? Okay, now, if God did not move the cup in Gethsemane and say, you know, you're right, we're not going to go through with this. If he did not take Jesus off that cross, then why do we think that God ought to move every obstacle, every little headache, every gnawing pain, every struggle that we have? If he allowed his son to go through that because of a higher purpose, something ought to click in our mind that the reason God has not moved that stuff that's messing with us is because he got something bigger for us. Am I making any sense? Somebody once told me that anything that's worth a struggle is worth keeping. Anything you got to work hard for is worth having. Lord, help me here today. Paul said, I discovered now because he wouldn't move it, Jermaine. He said, my grace is sufficient for thee. God is telling us the same thing. He said, all this stuff you complaining to me about, don't you know my grace is sufficient for you? Grace means that's enough. You got what it takes to make it. A lot of times our children give up on life and don't do what they're supposed to do because they dealing with parents who have no faith. You got to let them know that, yes, ain't nothing going to be given to you. Ain't no free lunch out here. But if you got God on your side, no matter what you're trying to do, God will make a way somehow. Some of us sitting up in here, you know you living by the grace of God. Huh? I shouldn't have to ask for an amen when I say God is good. Somebody that got a bonus ought to say he's more than that. Somebody whose lights wasn't turned off during all of this heat ought to say he's more than that. Somebody who's got transportation to get to your job in the morning, you ought to say he's more than that. His grace. Somebody had a cancer scare. I didn't say cancer. I said it scared you. But didn't he bring you? Huh? I said, didn't he bring you out? And then he explains, I'm just about through. He says, for my strength is made perfect in weakness. Put that verse 9 back up on the screen. I want to show these folks something. Put that, if you can do that. If y'all don't mind, if you try to do that. That is. Thank you. Look at what he says. He said unto me, whose grace is sufficient? So that means it's God's, right? For whose strength is made perfect in weakness? His strength, not Paul's. He said, my grace is sufficient, for my strength is made perfect in weakness. Do you know what that means? Look at it while you're looking at it. He said, I'm giving you my grace. That's enough for you. For my strength, you'll really get to see how strong I am when you were weak. You will never understand my strength until you are weak. We will never understand how strong God is until there's some weakness that we can't handle. How you gonna tell somebody, I got a testimony, and all you've been through is a shower? But when you've been through a storm, preach, Reverend, I ain't talking about no drizzle. I'm talking about nothing I ain't talking about where you can throw up an umbrella. See, when you in a rainstorm, when you raining and you throw up an umbrella and you dry, that's your grace. But when it's flooding and you don't get swept away, that's God's grace. Somebody better help me here. And when you are weak, then you know that God is strong, and he transfers, look at this, he transfers his strength, thank you, Jesus, into your weakness. And what you do, you won't walk out of this church telling God what you can't handle. What? Wait a minute, Reverend. Oh, wait. Didn't Paul say he had the thorn in his flesh? And you said he told God to move it and he still didn't move it, but it was still there? Yep. And look at what he says after he figures out how God transfers power. He says, therefore, I take pleasure in infirmities. In other words, let it come. Because if I'm sick, then I know what healing is like. If I run out of something, have necessities, I know when I'm hungry, God can feed me. If I'm persecuted, I know God can bring me out. If I'm in trouble for Christ's sake, I ain't worried about it. For when I am weak, I'm at my strongest point. Because I may not be able to move the problem. But if God does not make the problem leave me, he will fit me to handle the problem. Somebody better help me here. I'm looking for a witness now because I'm through. I just need somebody to tell the rest of these folk that don't believe it that I'm telling the truth. Won't God do what he say he gonna do? Anybody here, and when I say this, that means I had a problem. Anybody here ever had a thorn in your flesh? Somebody may have one right now. But isn't God every day making you stronger than what you were? Lynn, I remember there were some things I said I never would be able to handle, but God done fixed it so now I can stand back and laugh at that stuff because God has fixed it so that I'm stronger than what I was before. And it's not because he moved the stuff, it's because he left it right there. Singing that song, Trouble in My Way. I have to cry sometime. I lay awake at night, but that's all right. If we don't believe it's all right, quit singing it. Quit singing the Lord will make a way somehow if you don't believe it. Quit telling folk that God's going to fix it if he hadn't fixed you. I wish I had a witness. Somebody ought to know God is able. Yeah. How able is he? How able is he? How able is he? I'll show you how able he is. One Friday. I didn't say last Friday. I said one Friday. Is this mic on? I want folk to hear what I'm saying. Yeah, one Friday on a hill called Calvary, Jesus, the Son of God, gave his life for the sins of the world. Somebody ought to know God is able. One thief said, you ought to save yourself. Another said, you on your way somewhere and I want to go with you. He died one Friday on the cross on Calvary. But then early, one Sunday morning, he got up with all power in his hand. Somebody here that's been buried under problems, ought to tell me that God is able this morning. You know he brought you a long way. No, he brought you all of the way. Yes, he did. His grace is sufficient for me. David, help me out, David. He says, yea, though I walk through the valley of the shadow of death, I will fear no evil, for thou art with me. Ain't he all right? Thy grace and thy mercy shall follow me, and I will dwell in the house of the Lord forever. His grace and mercy brought me through. Paul was telling you that. His mercy is not allowing it to kill me, and his grace is fixing me so I can handle it. Don't go to the job tomorrow morning. Don't clock in Dean Hall saying, well, what I can't handle, because God done already handled it for you. You say, well, why would he put me in the midst of this? He putting you there because he knows you can handle it too. And he's making you stronger for the next situation that comes along. I wish I could let this alone. Whew. Y'all got one more minute? I want to tell you about some fellas that was on a boat. And the storm and the boat got the water was getting in there, and they was all fixing to die. They thought they was fixing to die, and they saw Jesus walking across the water. Peter saw him and said, Lord, don't you see what shape we in? I'm going to get out of here. And if it's you, I'm going to walk towards you. He went and walked toward Jesus. But you know the thing about that story, and I don't want to tell it too long. When Jesus picked him up after he said, Lord, save me. Notice when he picked him up and said, Lord, save me, he carried him right back to where he got out of. Ain't God all right? Sometimes God will put you right back into the stuff you think you can't handle. But because you've been with him, you can handle it now, because you know he's back there with you. Somebody ought to help me here. Amazing grace. How sweet the sound that saved a wretch like me. The door of this church is open. I once was lost, but now I'm found. Blind, but now I see. If there is one who would like to come today and be a part of this congregation, wherever you are, by letter, candidate for baptism, or Christian experience, if you want to be a member of Bethlehem Missionary Baptist Church, stand wherever you are and then come, and we will take you in. This is your time. His grace is sufficient. If there's one, will you come? Salvation is yours today because of the sacrifice he made.